If you ever hear a piercing wail outside your window in the middle of the night, don't look. And whatever you do, don't open the door. Because if you do, you might not live to regret it. Tonight's story comes from a subscriber, Siobhan, who grew up in rural Ireland and never believed in the old legends until the night she heard the banshees cry. Before I get into Siobhan's story, let's talk about the terrifying legend of the Banshee. The Banshee, or Banshee, is a supernatural entity from Irish folklore. She isn't a killer, she's a harbinger of death. If you hear her cry, it means someone in your family is about to die. She is said to appear in two horrifying forms: a young woman, pale as death, with long silver hair, crying softly into the night, or a horrific old crone with sunken eyes and a mouth stretched open in an endless wail. She often carries a silver comb, and legend says if you ever find one on the ground, never pick it up, because the moment you do, she will come for you. The Banshee is most often heard near specific Irish families, particularly those with O or Mac in their names. But even if you don't have Irish blood, if you hear her wail, it might still mean the worst is coming. Now that you know the lore, let's get into Siobhan's terrifying experience. Hey Rhilee, I've always been skeptical about ghosts and folklore, but what happened to me when I was 17 still haunts me. I never told anyone because if I say it out loud, it makes it real. But I need someone to hear this because the Banshee is real, and I think she came from my family. I grew up in a small village in County Kerry, Ireland, a quiet place where the only sounds at night were the wind through the trees and the occasional hoot of an owl. It was a bitterly cold night in late November, and my grandmother, Nana Mara, was very sick. She had been in and out of the hospital for weeks, and my family was preparing for the worst. That night, I couldn't sleep. There was a heaviness in the air, like the house itself was holding its breath. Then I heard it, a cry. Not a scream, not a sob, something far worse. It was high-pitched, unearthly, filled with sorrow and something darker, almost rage. It didn't sound human. It was the sound that makes your stomach drop and your body go cold. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding. The sound was coming from outside my window. That's when I made my first mistake. I looked. I pulled back the curtain just an inch, and I saw her. Standing at the edge of our yard, just beyond the old stone wall, was a woman, or at least I think it was a woman. Her hair was long and white, flowing around her like it was moving underwater. Her skin was so pale, it was almost glowing, and she wore a long, tattered, gray cloak. She was rocking back and forth, her mouth stretched open in a silent scream, but the wailing was still ringing in my ears. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Then she turned to me. Her eyes were hollow black pits, and the moment our gazes met, the wailing stopped. That's when I made my second mistake. I blinked. In that split second, she was right outside my window. I never saw her move. She was just there. Her bony fingers tapping against the glass. Her mouth opened again, and the scream came from inside my own head. I don't remember what happened next. I must have blacked out. When I woke up, it was morning. My mother was crying in the kitchen. Nana Mara had passed away in the night. I never told anyone what I saw. Who would believe me? But ever since that night, I can't hear a woman crying in the distance without feeling sick to my stomach. And worst of all, 2 weeks ago, I was walking home late at night, and for the first time since Nana Mara died, I heard the cry again. I've never been so afraid. So tell me, have you ever heard something outside your window at night? Something you knew wasn't human? If you ever hear a wail in the darkness, whatever you do, don't look.